Today we're going to learn how to solve polynomial equations in factored form. Now, we have been working in standard form for the last few lessons, so let me kind of explain what factored form is. So when a polynomial is written as a product of its factors, it's in factored form. So in standard form, think about that as when we would FOIL out or multiply and you'd have a trinomial or binomial. Factored form is the process before that. So let's say we had this x squared to plus 2x. This is it as factored form. We took out the x that it was multiplied to, that was distributed. And so the same thing here with this trinomial, the x minus 3 times x plus 8, that is the factored form that we'll be seeing. So what we have to do is get it into the zero product property. That's when one side of the equation is in factored form, and we have to make sure it's all equal to 0. We want it all equal to 0, so that means all the other numbers are on the other side of the equation. And the roots are what's called the solutions for these equations. So it's pretty simple. Let's go ahead and get into some examples. So all you have to do is, when we have this equation, we take each section that we see and set it equal to 0. So I have an x and an x plus 8. So everything that's multiplying, we separate them and have them equal to 0. So I have x equals 0, and then x plus 8 equals 0, and then we just solve them. So obviously we have our answer here for this first one. It already says it, x equals 0. So that's one of our answers. And then when we subtract 8 on both sides, on the second equation, we get the answer of x equals negative 8, and that is also an answer. So we're going to have multiple answers here. For the most part, we will have 2. You might have 3. It depends on how many x's you see. So for the next one, we already have it set out for us. We set each factor equal to 0. So we separate them. We have x plus 6 equals 0, x minus 5 equals 0, and then we solve. Hopefully you guys can get to the point where you're doing it in mental math, but these are the answers we would get. When we subtract 6 over, it'd be a negative 6, and when we add 5 over, we get a positive 5. And so this very last one, it's kind of like our first example. We have an x equals 0, and x minus 1 equals 0. When we solve them, we get x equals 0 and x equals 1, and that's our answer. So however many x's you see, that's how many answers you will get. I do want you guys to try these next few on your own. However, I want to do this third example with you before I let you go. So this says b plus 7 squared. So really what that means is it's b plus 7 times b plus 7 equals 0. Now, as you can see, that's going to be the same answer. If we separate our two factors, we have b plus 7 equals 0 and b plus 7 equals 0. So our ultimate answer twice is b equals negative 7, and again b equals negative 7. You guys do not have to answer it twice. You could just answer it once and that would be okay. So think about that when you're doing this last example down here. So go ahead and try these 5 on this page. You will have fractions. Keep them as improper fractions. That's fine. And check back to see if your answers are correct. All right, these are the answers you should have gotten when you separated each factored part of the polynomial that we have. So these are the answers you should have received. Now remember, in this very last one, it's really going to be x equals 2 twice. But if you write it once, that is completely okay. So make sure you have everything correct, including the negatives or positives. Now we have a word problem to go along with this. So it says the arch of a fireplace can be modeled by this equation, where x and y are both measured in inches. The x-axis represents the floor of that fireplace, and they want us to find the width at the floor level. So let me kind of explain this for a second. So we have this this graph that we see, okay? And this equation is what is being shown. So we have this arch happening. So let me kind of draw that so you guys can see it a little better. Okay, so this is the opening to a fireplace. Now, we have to find out what our answer is for this equation at the top, and I'm going to explain what that really means down at the bottom. So what we have is we need to set each part equal to 0. So instead of y here, we're going to have a 0 equals negative 1/9 times x plus 18 times x minus 18. Now, all we have to do is set each part of this equation equal to 0. However, we only have to worry about the parts that have x involved, so we literally can forget about the negative 1/9. It does not matter. So what we have is we have x plus 18 equals 0 and x minus 18 equals 0. Our two answers are x equals negative 18 and x equals positive 18. Now what that really means in terms of a graph, these are our x-intercepts. So at this point right here that this crosses in the negatives, this is actually at negative 18 comma 0, and this positive one is at positive 18 comma 0. So if we have that, they want us to find the width of this whole entire area. That means we have to find the distance. So if we have all the way from negative 18 to positive 18, we need to find the difference there. So if we go ahead and multiply 18 by 2, that's how we find that. And we end up getting 36 inches is the width of this arch. It's not 18 inches because that would mean that's only half of our opening because we have to go to 0. So 0 to 18, well, that's 18 inches, but then we have 0 to negative 18. That's another 18 inches. So you multiply 18 by 2, we get 36 inches as the width of our fireplace. Go ahead and do this next one. It's the same situation, except we're talking about an entrance to a mine shaft. So what we have are our equations, or our one equation, and it's measured in feet. So we have to find the entrance, the width of the entrance to the level of the ground. So what is going to happen again is you have your T-chart, and it is an arch. And so you have to find what our zeros are. It's what our answers are to this equation. And then you have to find the distance between them. Check back and see if your answers are correct. All right, so this is the answer I received. So when I solved the equations, I got -4 and +4, which means that's where our x-intercepts are. So this arch starts at -4, 0, and it goes all the way to +4, 0. So to find the distance in between, it is 8 feet. Make sure you label your answers.